As someone who went on hiatus specifically to change the format of their comic, I think I have a few things to tell you that could sway you on your decision when you make your webcomic. Hi, I'm Morgan Parker, creator of Running Against the Universes and Paperclips. RATU is currently posting again while Paperclips is on hiatus for another year. Links in the description. In 2020, when I wanted to start Paperclips, I ended up deciding on going with the web format. The web format is a phone-first, vertical scrolling format that's harder to read on PC. I'll also often refer to it as the webtoon format, as I feel Webtoon themselves popularized the format. It was in early 2023 that I decided to scrap everything that I had, 67 episodes between the two comics, and go into the traditional format, which I have now been working on for over a year. With my credentials out of the way, let's get into the battle of format versus format. Both the web format and the traditional format have their ups and downs, as well as a few optional things to think about. The first question you have to ask yourself is, how far do you want this comic to go? As in, do you want to traditionally publish? The answer to this question could already sway your decision. When it comes to physical publishing, you could do both. What I mean by that is, you could absolutely format a traditional style comic into a web format. You could get the benefits of both. It just costs a lot of time. You could also theoretically do the reverse. It's been done. Lore Olympus, Unordinary, and other web-style comics have been physically published. But the Lore Olympus physical books are squares because the web format is much harder to shove into the traditional format. With the traditional format, however, the reformatting is much easier. It still takes time, but rather than squeezing the infinite of the webtoon into about a 6 by 9.5 inch traditional, you're moving the panels of the 6 by 9.5 traditional into the infinite. There's more room to work with. So if you're specifically looking for that web format, but you know you're going to physically publish, it would be easier to start with traditional and move your panels into the web format as you go. If you're not looking for that both experience, let's get into the nitty-gritty of each format. Each of them have their pros and cons, so if you're neutral or not considering physically publishing, you have more than that to consider. So let's start with the classical webtoon format. When you click on most of the popular webtoons, you're likely to see them in that vertical scrolling format. Webtoons as a platform is phone first. They have the website, and you can read on the website, but the website is mostly there to help users publish their own comic. They're after your viewership, and they're expecting to get you as a student, quickly wanting to read a comic between classes. When you try to read the webtoon format on PC, however, you either have to minimize the page a bunch or just give your fingers a workout scrolling to read a single speech bubble. Oftentimes, not all the art will fit on one page, so you have to scroll up and down to see everything at once. You're still scrolling on a phone, but because there's more vertical screen there, it's a more streamlined experience. The webtoon format can also allow for slightly more freedom. Things outside of panels are common. Spacing things out for a few hundred pixels is a fun and interesting way to convey certain moods. Gradients and changing of the outer color are a bit easier. There is a bit more creative freedom, especially depending on how you size your canvas. Now that Webtoon does the cropping for you when you upload, the only limitations are on your device and on the program you use. For me, my absolute limit was 16,300 pixels. My old canvas size was 800 by 16,000, with just a touch of room to extend if I had something that could fit in the extra 300 pixels. While there's a whole lot of room in the vertical, there's typically not in the horizontal. Webtoon's limit is 800 by 1280. They'll auto crop for you, but they're first making sure it sizes into 800. It's worse on Tapas, because Tapas has a hard limit of 940 pixels. I personally had to go to a cropping website to crop the over 200 pages I have done for RATU to get them uploaded to the site. They'll auto crop length, but not width, which is where some people will then decide to either stick with 800 or 940, because it's easier. But then, that's only 800 pixels to work with horizontally. And while you can no doubt get interesting things vertically, horizontally is a whole other story, not to mention just how small that is to work with. That was a lot of info about the webtoon format. How about I get into traditional? After this, I'll specifically talk about the compare and contrast of the two formats before I free you to go make your comic. I definitely have more experience with the web format at this point. I did it for 2 years and a few months, whereas I've only barely been doing the traditional format for a year. And looking at other traditional comics, I know that I'm still heavily influenced by the web look, which is something that I'm breaking out of. My experiences most likely differ from a genuine traditional format, but I consider it adjacent to it at the very least. And it's the look I'm going for, and it's kind of achieved with what I've been drawing recently. Several episodes of RATU's new pages are out. A new one comes out tonight at 7 p.m. MST, so you can go judge for yourself. Just know I've also gotten a bit better over the years, together, so those old panels and the latest ones look different. Last minute, I'd also decided to upload the first season of Paperclips, and towards the end of that is closer to what my pages look like today, though there's still a few months between when I finished those and now. My speed paints are also a good source for what my modern pages look like. Regardless, let's get into it. First of all, you are hard locked to the size you've chosen. I leaned more for a graphic novel size, and I landed at 6 by 9.5 inch pages. I'm no authority on page size, and there are some different sizes based on what you go for, so do your own research on that. This is just my experience. For purposes of the direct comparison of the format, I'll be ignoring the possibility of reformatting the panels. The size you chose for the traditional is what you have to work with for each page. While you can vertically extend the web format and thus do everything on the one page and see a lot of it at once, it's harder to do with traditional, especially based on which program you choose to use. I personally use ProCreate. The way I decided to get around this is by doing my thumbnails on a web-sized canvas, so 800 by 16,000 pixels. I drew some lines in a 6 by 9.5 inch canvas and copy and pasted them to the big canvas and spaced them out as needed. It's marked by page number, location, how big it actually is, and I left space between each page to mark what page it actually is. Season 1, episode 12, page 2, for example. I stylized it like a Minecraft version when I wrote the script, and I thought it was hilarious that I accidentally wrote down the version I spent years on because the mods were really good then, 1.12.2. But it lets me see around 11 pages at once, and I just copy and paste them over to the respective pages when I start working on that episode. Traditional pages are big. While you're locked into the size, you've got an incredible amount of space to work with, vertically and horizontally. You have more freedom with panels and space because you have so much more room to work with on that horizontal. It's easier to detail the page and fit in as much as possible to create the space you're after. I was able to do a picture frame on a bookshelf and achieved some good detail on it, whereas if I tried the same thing on the web format, I'd probably do lineless blobs. The traditional format also makes certain things feel special. A lot of the time you want to keep everything in the panels. So, if you do a speech bubble outside of a panel, it makes it really feel like it's interrupting the previous panel. I've utilized that a few times now, and it packs more of a punch than it did on the web format, since I did most of the text outside the panels then. With there being much less room vertically, you have to be a bit more crafty to get across things that may be easier on the web format. I utilized a few hundred pixel spacing several times on the web format, mostly to portray the passage of time. I changed that up for the traditional format by creating a snowflake brush, example on screen now. Now let's talk about a few things in terms of what you yourself draw in the time frame you set. Mind you, in a few weeks I'll be posting a video that's about why you should never listen to me when it comes to scheduling and posting and what you draw, so take all this with a grain of salt until that video comes out. My week by week has changed over time. I found the absolute limit of what I can do in a week without wanting to die inside, and that's about what I aim for, hence the upcoming video about not listening to me. The original season 2 of Paperclips posted every other week and landed at about 3 800 by 16,000 pixel canvases per upload, sometimes more, sometimes less. The original season premiere for Paperclips season 2 is just shy of the limit Webtoon has set on posting. At the end, it averaged 2 800 by 16,000 pixel canvases. I'm not past season 2 yet on the redraw, but when it comes to modern pages, I average somewhere around 7 to 15 pages per upload. 10 is about what I aim for. I aim to never go above 15. On the redraw, Paperclip Season 2 premiere is 21 pages, and that took a month. Mind you, I was also sick for some of that time, but for the original version, I had taken a 3-month hiatus to work on, with a 1-month no drawing break, and it took me 2 months to complete. There's not a whole lot to say about this point for now. Both options have no limit about how much you can do at a time. It's a bit easier with the Webtoon format because once you finish drawing that section, you can just crop the page. With the traditional format, you may have to either cut some panels or extend them to fill the page, which isn't a bad thing. You either cut out fluff you realized didn't necessarily need to be there, or you add a bit more fluff to create a better atmosphere. I added a page to the episode I'm drawing on scripting this, Paperclips Season 2 Episode 6. To fill up the panels I had to include that bled onto another page. What did I add? Lily crying herself to sleep. Missed opportunity the first time on my part. It's basically down to what you can handle, what is reasonable, and what you want to do, which I'm saving for that scheduling video in a few weeks. So, let's review. The Webtoon format and the traditional format are both good in their own ways, and there are ways to get the benefits of both by reformatting one into the other. It's easier to go from traditional to web. The web format has an infinite possibility in the vertical, while a typically hard limit on the horizontal. The traditional format typically has a hard limit on both the vertical and horizontal, but is often bigger on the horizontal, making smaller details easier to complete. The web format allows for things like spacing between panels, whereas the traditional format requires more thought as a page is locked into the size you make it. They can also make the traditional format more customizable, such as creating a different brush that you use to show time, such as my snowflake brush. Another example on screen now. Text bubbles are more contained in the traditional format, but it makes breaking those rules pack more of a punch than the typical freedom on the web format. Both formats have their own ways to set how much you want to complete in a specific time frame. Web can be cropped, while in traditional you have to either add or cut panels. The first question you'll have to ask yourself is whether or not you want to physically publish your comic one day, and the answer typically lies there, but you always have options. My next recommendation for you is to sketch out a set of panels, one in the web format, the other in the traditional format. Use the same segment. You can even start on one and format it to the other to see what that's like. You'll never know what works for you unless you test it. You don't have to do a lot. You don't even have to finish it. But by sketching it out and actually starting that process, you'll get a feel for how it works and what you yourself like to do. So before you think about starting your comic, just go over a few things with yourself and address the things you want to do and don't want to do. Before I send you off, I'll hit you with a few other recommendations and suggestions. When it comes to panels, you don't have to make the outer box perfect lines. If it fits your comic, you can do a rougher style. That's what I landed on after some testing at the beginning of my hiatus to start the traditional format. When it comes to your font choice, it should first off be sans serif. I suggest looking up common webcomic fonts and choosing one of those, making sure you're able to use it. Or you could make your own. I personally have been making my own fonts since about 2021. Eventually, I may end up offering some of my favorites as free to use and publishable fonts. They'd be entirely free, including commercial use, and uploaded to my Patreon if I ever choose to do so. I've created a few now in my lifetime, and my current two that I use for my comics are CV Morgan Text, shut up, the font came first, and CV Cyrus Text. Cyrus Text is for my user interface segments, such as the time on phones or emails or app names. Morgan Text is the actual dialogue and thought bubbles. Text bubbles themselves don't have to be rigid shapes either. As long as they have the proper spacing around the text and they're not vacuum sealed, if it fits the style of your comic, you can make the text bubbles freely shaped. All of this is just recommendations and suggestions from things I do. I've made several fonts because it's something I like. I've made several versions of the same font because I realized I could do better. CV Cyrus Text and Cyrus Text are technically two different things. The name only changed slightly because plain Cyrus Text came first and CV Cyrus Text is the updated version. CV is just what I started prefixing with because A, my comic universe is the CV, Clipverse, and B, it's easier to reach in ProCreate if it starts with a C, and Cyrus Text was already taken. CV Morgan Text is basically an updated version of CV's Soft Text. Soft was just a bit too thin, so in a last-minute decision I created Morgan Text in the same vein as Soft and made it a bit thicker so it was more readable. Too long, didn't watch. Try everything for yourself. You can only watch so many comic tutorials or tips videos before it's clear that you're just procrastinating. You'll never learn if you don't start, so get to it! That's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.